Run.
Let me open up my.
It's too late. It's too late. It's just too late.
It's never too late.
Yeah. So we're I don't know. I won't do the announcement yet of what show number
This looks
we're on.
like shit.
Yeah.
A little fuzzy.
A little fuzzy. All right, let me just jump in and do the intro and just say, hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 149 of Mirrorless Minutes. Tonight we've got Mark Miller on. It's been a minute since Mark has been on. There have been a few changes lately for him. Then that's kind of one of the reasons we've got him on here. Hey, how's it going, Steve? Hey, Steve's on YouTube commenting. So apparently YouTube is back up. Yeah, that's a really good sign. I was just going to say to everyone that as of like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes ago or less, YouTube was down. And so hence we shot out some tweets. So Shelly says YouTube down. Yeah, I think it is. It has been for a lot of people. So we're just kind of suggesting people swing over to Facebook right now.
We're winging it tonight.
Wing ding dinging it. Jerry is the king of wing ding dinging it. Like right up till we hit go on the show.
Jerry's the king of computer issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess let's just kind of dive right into this. Hey, how's it going, Mark? It's been a minute since you've been on.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. Everything's going well. At this point in time, 2020 has been a fun year. It's got off to a pretty slow start for me anyway, and then about was it a month and a half, 2 months ago, we finally got out and took a trip to shoot, and that's been a big bonus and kind of sparking my motivation and getting out there again, because every trip I had planned for 2020 got canceled and put on hold, so it's just been one letdown after another.
Right. 2020 is the year that just keeps on giving.
Oh yeah, not the way you want it.
No, gosh, definitely not. So
unless you're 420 dog face.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know, that's the ocean spray dude with the freaking on the skateboard.
Yeah.
That dude's living his best life right now.
For sure is.
I just saw him and Snoop Dogg did a commercial, a commercial for some like the Ring doorbell, a different brand.
Oh my gosh.
He did a commercial with Snoop Dogg, yeah.
That's crazy.
That's amazing. Dude is just cruising down the road, drinking ocean spray, and then Ocean Spray buys him a car, and his whole life.
He did something with Wiz Khalifa too.
That's the beauty of social media. It really is. Yeah. And that's what I'll tell you what. I love TikTok for that, because TikTok isn't about like the big celebrities and all that. They're all on there.
Right.
I don't think they get as much attention as just the average person who does something that just kind of catches people's attention.
There's some funny stuff on there, man. There's some funny stuff on there.
It's amazing. There's some cool stuff on there too. There's a lot of talented people out there. So let's talk about why you're here, Mark. You've been shooting an Olympus camera since not too long after we met.
Nope, 5 or 6 years, I think, since I went fully into Olympus, and definitely enjoyed it and made a recent change, and that's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. So when we met, I think it was at a light painting thing. I don't remember if it was a light painting thing I hosted or if somebody else hosted it, but you were shooting Nikon then?
Yep. I had a couple Nikon cameras back then, and I think it was a Jacksonopolis light painting event that we were at, and saw you and Travis's Olympus with a live comp or the lifetime on there, and I was like, what the hell's going on here?
Right, yeah. So then jumped into that. Now your Nikons, when you were shooting those, were you APS-C or were you full frame? I don't remember. It's been a long time.
I had one of each. I had their lowest level full frame for a short period. I think it was like the 600 something like that.
Yep.
And it was, a good system and all that, but wanted to get lighter and saw the tech in the Olympus, and so started to make some switches at that point, and that was a lot of fun, to play around with. And now I've kind of came back around and jumped into a new full frame system, and it's pretty awesome.
So you made this. Now you haven't really like completely abandoned your other system, right? I mean, you still have an Olympus camera, so you've just kind of added on. You've expanded, what you're shooting with.
Yep, I traded in some of the Olympus stuff to fund the Sony, and so I've got a mix of two systems now. I like the tech in Olympus. I mean, you can't deny, what they do there, and it's so much fun to do, the star trails and stuff like that without having to go into Photoshop and stack a couple hundred images.
Right.
So you got to have the best.
But there is a plus side to that, though. I will say.
To stack in theirs.
Yes, because how many times have we been doing live composite and then a helicopter flies through your shot?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Too many times.
And then you're like, God damn, dude. I was literally 45 minutes into a shot and a helicopter flew through my shot.
Yep. Yeah. That is.
So that is the plus side to doing it with the other way without live composite, because you can remove those images from the
stack. Yeah, for sure. So so you jumped into the Sony.
Yep.
Right. And where are you at with that? Like, what did you end up getting for for the body, and like what lenses are you using or planning on getting?
Yep. So I got the Sony A7III, and I've got a Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter to go with it right now. And so far, that's all I've put into that system.
Yeah.
Next lens I'll probably get is the 17 to 28 Tamron.
Yep.
And then from there, who knows?
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
So I'm in the same boat you are. I have just the 28 to 75, and I'm leaning the other way. I'm thinking of getting the 75 to 180 to get some reach.
Yep.
So is there a reason why you want to go with the 17 to 28 instead of getting that extra reach?
I'm a big sucker for wide angle, super wide shots. I love, 99% of what I do is landscape, and I like shooting super wide. So that's probably the first place I'll go.
Makes sense.
If I shot more portraits and stuff, I'd probably go for the better reach on it, to compress for the better compression and all that. Shooting wildlife or something, but it's just not really my thing, so I tend to always go wide.
Right on.
So for someone who, like yourself, although I guess you did have some experience with another system before Olympus, at least another system that you had a full frame body. And I know that as Olympus users, I hadn't touched another brand of camera or another sensor size anyways for like 10 years. So I had known nothing about, you'd hear the arguments online, a full frame is superior for, whatever, but what would you tell someone who's curious about the difference that you see between full frame and crop? I mean, and it doesn't have to be, any one particular like segment, like low light or whatever. I mean, just kind of like an overall picture. Like, have you seen certain areas where full frame makes more sense, or you have a benefit that you might not have in micro four thirds, and then vice versa too, so that, just to keep the comparisons kind of, unbiased or whatever.
Sure. The biggest factors for me right now with the full frame is obviously the low light and your dynamic range. I mean, I've taken some shots just trying to push the limits with it, shooting, straight into the sunrise.
Yeah.
Your whole foreground and everything's blacked out, and all you got is a color in the sky. And then going in to process those raw files and seeing how much detail you can pull out before it falls apart.
Right.
And, with my Olympus and some of the older Nikon gear, I had some shots like that, and you just can't recover, the shadows without losing it and getting that grain and the kind of purpley pinks in your, in the foreground. And I was shocked, honestly, how much you can pull out of these Sony files, and it still is crisp and clean, and it's, the actual colors that are there. You're pulling, the green grass out. It's not just turning it to mud.
Right. Yeah.
So that's awesome. I love the high ISO. You just get such clean images.
Right.
You're shooting, 8,000 ISO and even well beyond that, you're still getting very usable files. And I shot some weddings in the past with my Olympus and with the Nikon before that, where you weren't allowed to use any off-camera flash or anything within the church for the ceremonies.
Yeah.
And so you're pumping the ISO and you're trying to play that, balancing game where you've got a good enough shutter speed where you can kind of freeze and get a good clean image, but you don't want to turn it to trash with all grain. And then you get back and it's just, they're not bad
your
images.
heart sinks into your stomach.
Right. You're like, oh crap.
It does.
I hope they want it all in black and white.
Right.
And that you got some good shots, and then you put them up on Lightroom and you start looking through them, and it's they're not bad, they're still usable, but
right.
The difference is kind of
you lose a little detail because of the grain.
Yep. And I mean, you don't get like, the little watery gloss look in the eyes. Everything's kind of got that fuzzy feel to it.
Looks blocky and
Yeah. And I don't like that. And I've printed a lot of those images and they turn out okay. But, there's something to be said about being able to push your ISO and still get a very clean, sharp image out of it.
Yeah. So I have to ask now, I know you haven't had it for very long. Like, how long have you had this now? About 3 weeks, maybe?
3 or 4 weeks, I believe, something like that.
So one of the things that I've noticed is dust is it's basically like the minute you open up the front of the Sony camera, it's like a vacuum cleaner has turned on. Have you experienced any issues with dust yet?
Yeah. Yep. And I don't know why. I mean, honestly, I don't think I've ever had a camera where I've had an issue with dust in the past. I've never cleaned a sensor ever, of all the cameras I've had. And this one, I don't know what it is, but I swear you pop the lens off and for some reason something gets in there and it's like, what in the world? So I got the little, rocket blower thing with me all the time and just, got to take care of it. But it does have some sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, but it picks it up.
It's like it's like the sensor has a static charge that it can't release, because I know I've been in situations where I know there's no wind blowing. There's no reason for any sort of debris to get into my camera. And I'm pretty religious about turning, the opening of the camera downward when I take a lens off and put one on. And I swear it's almost like somebody was just sprinkling in fuzz and dust onto the sensor. It's just insane, So it's one of the things from at least from the Sony system that I think is a huge downfall compared to like Olympus. I know when you use the sensor cleaning system in the Sony, it feels like there's a little jackhammer going. The whole if you ran that with your camera sitting on a table, I'd be afraid it would vibrate itself off the side of the table. Whereas the Olympus, you don't even know it's
never
running.
Know it does it now.
So I know that for me personally, anyways, that's kind of been a downside of the Sony system. And then just curious what your experience is with the image stabilization in the Sony. I don't know if you've had opportunity to shoot in like a slower shutter speed situation and where that would be a factor.
Yeah, I've done some, and I've got some images that I'll show where I was, just hand holding, shooting some stuff inside, trying to just basically play around, with the camera and all the different things I'm shooting right now. But it's definitely a factor. Olympus, you seem to be able to hand hold and shoot
for like
very,
minutes.
very well. Yeah, like longer than you should.
Right.
And the Sony, you definitely have a little bit of a fall off there as well. So,
right.
I mean, you're going to have little trade-offs here and there. it's like I said, if you can get 2 systems and it's not going to break your bank. I mean, I'm not going to go all in and have every lens and every body for, both.
Right.
Build one kit for, one style of shooting. Yeah. And then keep the Olympus with a few lenses that, are just specific to what I want to use that for,
Yep.
And then you've got the best of both worlds and kind of do what you want from there.
Yep. I know. So since I've come out as someone who's using a different system other than Olympus, in the past like 8 or 9 months, I get probably realistically 6 or 7 messages or emails a week from people who are first a little shocked that I'm sharing something that wasn't shot with Olympus. And then the questions usually follow are like, should I sell my Olympus gear? And, is Sony better than Olympus? And I think that's kind of my default answer to people is, if you're already invested in Olympus, I would say don't leave it. If you can afford to add a second system to use for other things, I totally recommend that because, like you said, that each system definitely has its strong points. And, I'll let you and Jerry answer this one. I don't know, how much experience you have with this yet, but I know Jerry has been using Sony on and off for years. So Adam's just kind of curious about, shooting sports, which one would you lean towards for sports between Sony and Olympus? I know I have a personal opinion. I'll let you guys talk first on that. But, Jerry, so what do you think about that? Have you shot enough action with the Sony to compare it to the Olympus?
Yeah, for sure. Lighting is going to play a big part in that answer.
Yes.
If you're shooting at night, even stadium lighting isn't the greatest.
No, it's not.
If you're shooting outdoors during the day and it's bright, you're not going to have a problem with either of them. I think where the Sony will shine a little more is if you're shooting indoors because you can crank that ISO.
Yeah.
And the one thing, the thing that for me with the Sony is, I shoot one of the A7R models.
Yeah.
So, dude, I can crop forever.
Yeah, you can.
And I don't lose any detail in my images. So, I don't know. It's hard to say, man. Like, definitely, if you're shooting indoors or in low light, the Sony's probably the way to go.
Yep.
If your sports are, most of them are outside during the day, and then your Olympus will be fine.
Yeah. What about you, Mark? Do you have an opinion on that yet at this point?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I echo what Jerry says there. I mean, that's, makes the most sense for you're going to be pushing the ISO, shooting indoors or a football game at night, at a high school where they've got not poor, but, it's not college or NFL lighting. You're going to have to crank your ISO up to try to freeze the image. During the day, you're good with both. I do still like the Pro Cap and the Olympus bodies. I mean, that's a killer feature to have. That's pretty brilliant shooting action because when I was out in Whistler with Olympus, we were shooting snowboarders and skiers coming down the hill, and the way that you can just hold that button down and just let it go and then stop it, and you've got every frame in there is, unbelievable. So there's, pros and cons to both. Like, we've said before, but I don't know if I would lean one way or the other unless you're only shooting one type of, genre. If you're shooting football at night, go with a Sony. Right. If you're shooting indoor basketball, Sony. But if you're doing action sports and stuff outside during the day, you can't go wrong with either of them. So.
Right. I agree. I know from my experience, I've got a little bit of experience with the Sony, not with a ton of fast moving subjects in low light, but I will say this much, at least when it comes to landscape photography, I'm finding, and I'll tie this back to the sports here, but with my landscape experience, I noticed that it may be the lenses I'm using, they're all the Tamron lenses, but I find that the Sony, for whatever reason, is hunting to lock focus in situations where I know an Olympus camera would nail it immediately.
Are you talking low light?
Yes, low light.
Yeah, low light focusing isn't the greatest.
Yeah,
at least on the model I have.
It's same on mine with the A7III. Like I said, images that I'll share today, Mark might have some from the same, scene that we were shooting. We were on the lake shore in Lake Michigan in the morning, pre-sunrise, and just you have a spot in the cloud, where there'd be separation between a light cloud and the dark, or vice versa. And I know on the Olympus camera, it would immediately lock that focus instantaneously. In the Sony, I would just watch it bop in and out, and to the point where I'm just like freaking out because the light's changing so fast. It's just jump into manual mode and focus that way. Tracking, I shoot almost 99% of the time on Olympus with the EM1X, and the tracking on that is fabulous for sports. So I can't knock that one single bit. The focus tracking on the Sony is pretty incredible too. I haven't had it in a situation where I've got multiple people who are crossing paths to see how that works out. But I know just with people walking towards you, that axis of focus, so not lateral, but coming straight at the camera, the Sony is killer. I know my Olympus historically has kind of struggled with that, with that depth focus, tracking, but it's gotten significantly better with the EM1X and the EM1 Mark III. So I think I'm just going to go with what you guys said on this one as well. If you're an indoor shooter, which this kind of just goes back to this question that Dave Bostador asked right after Adam, he does a lot of indoor concerts, like metal concerts and things like that, where it's dark and smoky. The high ISO is going to be a champion for you in those situations. You may experience the potential for focus issues also in that scenario. I would suggest that you try to get your hands on one and shoot in one of those settings and kind of see how it works out for you, Dave, in that. But I know the ISO side of things, it'll be a home run. I mean, you just can't beat the light gathering that a full frame sensor does, especially Sony. Sony's like the king of that right now, I feel. And, but the focusing might be a different issue. And like you said, Mark, Pro Capture is astounding. If you use Pro Capture, you will never miss a moment in sports. I mean, hell, I capture lightning strikes in broad daylight thanks to Pro Capture, you know? And so, again, to answer Dave and Adam, I don't know that there's a one camera for every situation, but if you guys are in low light, I mean, I think that the scale is going to tip towards the full frame sensor for that, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just add, with the focusing in the low light, I haven't had the experience, but I wonder if it's a difference just between the Tamron lenses and possibly, if you went with a Sony lens, maybe it's, considered a premium product that it might do better,
Yep.
Because every lens you get is going to have a different speed at how fast they can focus, and
for sure, you have
brand
to
to brand.
Yeah, I mean, if Sony's developing the lens for their system, they will just basically say they probably have a little bit of an inside edge on optimizing for the camera versus Tamron, who has probably getting sample cameras in that they're trying to reverse engineer how Sony works, to get their lenses to work best. Another question came in from Steve. He just wants to know, does the new ownership with Olympus weigh into system choices? Not for me. My role is different, but I mean, that's a really good question for, Mark and Jerry to answer though.
I don't think it does, because this is how I look at it. A camera's a camera. Until it breaks, it's gonna do its job. It don't matter what brand the camera is. If most of the time it's the photographer that makes the image anyway.
Right.
So no, I don't think that weighs in. I mean, you'll lose like if something happens down the road, you might not be able to get parts, or you might not be able to get something fixed, or the lenses might get limited if they decide to stop making lenses down the road or whatever. But it's not going to stop what you currently have from working.
Right. And I know, as of now, currently, there are no plans to stop, honoring any kind of warranty or service here in the States. I can't speak for outside the United States, but I'm going to assume that it's going to remain the same in other countries as well. So, again, I think that even removes one more factor from, deciding against, currently purchasing Olympus. And I'll tell you this much, as one of the founders and admins for several of the largest Olympus groups on Facebook, the OMD enthusiast group, I get an average of 25 new members a day. And that 25 a day is the average that's happened since their announcement of the sale to JIP. So it's kind of crazy that they make this announcement that they're, parting ways with their camera division, and there is this massive surge of people joining the groups that I'm adminning, the OMD, the basically the big bodies, the EM1 and EM1X family. That enthusiast group, the EM10 enthusiast group, even the PenF enthusiast group are all seeing humongous surges. So I think
are you seeing the surges because they're worried and got questions, or are they new members, or
they're new members
new photographers?
I'm curious, so I'm considering doing some sort of a poll to kind of to gauge that. I know Olympus would probably be really interested in those numbers. This group has grown exponentially in the last couple of months, but honestly, a lot of the people that come into these groups say, I just got an OMD.
Right. That's
so I would like to see Olympus's sales figures. I think they're selling more cameras now probably than they have in a while. But
it don't matter, dude. I mean, I go buy cameras at the thrift store. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just buy a camera and go take pictures.
And what about you, Mark? So knowing that this news had broke a while ago that Olympus was kind of selling off the camera division to basically like an investment firm, a company that's going to try to fix what they couldn't do right, I guess. Is that part of the driver for you getting a Sony, or is the Sony because you were looking for a way to expand your system beyond what you could currently do with it?
He saw them pictures we were taking.
Yeah, I saw some images and got jealous. Camera envy.
That didn't happen in the UP, did it?
I might have. But
what are you drinking, man?
The Balvenie. It's a 15-year aged in sherry casks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark. Go ahead, man.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little bit of both. I was interested in getting another system, after seeing some stuff and wanting to kind of push and expand what I have and what I can do. And then, there's still a little bit of long-term uncertainty, with the sale, because it's been very quiet. There's not, committal, long-term plans. And my only thought is, do I keep investing everything I have into this company? And the cameras will last, for however long they last.
Unless
the glass
in the lake.
Yeah, the glass will last, forever. But at some point, if they decide they're done with cameras, and then I've got all this glass that is to one system and I can't upgrade my bodies anymore, then, that's kind of my thought behind it is maybe, instead of putting all my eggs in one basket, split it up, and now I've got 2 avenues. So as long as they keep making stuff and everything's good, I'll upgrade my Olympus bodies over time with the tech and all that stuff. But if for some reason they pull the plug, I'm not 100% out. I've still got another avenue. So
no, it's a smart play for sure. Again, if somebody has the means to do what you're doing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's probably the smartest play.
Right.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with having both. And it gives you options, down the road. So,
so
Like
Adam,
Fuji.
add a third system.
Yeah, you never know.
So Adam says, that there's a great community in Olympus, and I cannot agree more. There's nothing like that. I personally have had zero experience in Sony groups. I don't belong to any Sony groups other than one Jerry made. And I think there's 3 people in it or something. I don't know. And you probably don't even remember that you made it.
I know, right? I was like, what group?
Yeah. So So I can't speak for the Sony community, but I know I've heard from people, either through, emails and messages or during workshops or whatever, that the community in Olympus is unlike anything else. And I'm just curious, since you've gotten a Sony, I know as a way to educate yourself, there's YouTube, but another good resource often is, Facebook groups and communities. Have you joined anything like that and had an experience with that yet?
Nope. Surprisingly,
Join my group
I
when you
haven't.
format.
Yeah, I gotta go find the one group that's out there apparently. But I have not had any
There's a ton
experience
of
with
them.
the Sony groups. I'm sure there is. I just honestly haven't even looked. But my experience with all the Olympus groups has been great. I've met tons of, hundreds of people.
They keep deleting
over the
my
years.
comments.
And it's always a good
Adam.
group and a lot of people. So
Yeah, for sure. There's, if anything ever happens to Olympus, I think that's the one thing that will really be the hardest to swallow is just how tight of a community it is, and how willing everyone is to work with everyone else. The Olympus cameras, there's a lot of tech in these cameras, and they're super complicated. The menu system's different, than everybody else's. So, that adds to the complexity. And, again, in the groups that I'm adminning, I'll see people come in and ask, either the most basic of questions or the most complicated of questions. And I just watch people pile in with responses, all positive. I don't think, rarely do I see somebody come in and just act like a jerk. And now I know I've heard from people. I remember back in the Flickr days, for sure, when I was part of those communities, I saw people in the other systems where they're kind of snooty, and if you didn't have the answer, they were jerks. So, Adam is 100% right. The community in Olympus is amazing.
yeah, absolutely.
So we kind of know what system you got now. We know what you're shooting with it, at least, for the most part. You talked about landscape and things like that. And we know kind of, exactly what camera you got and what lens you're currently working with and stuff like that. Maybe it's time to do an image share, and you can talk about, some of the images that you've been creating and kind of go behind, what the process was like using that camera versus Olympus, because it is a bit of a different experience.
Sure. Yep.
And then once you get those queued up, I will drop them in the screen share here. If you can remember how to do it. I know it's always a pain. And I don't remember if you're
Come
on
on, Mark, get it together, man.
Trying to figure this thing out. It's asking me.
So you're on a Mac?
Yeah, I'm on a Mac.
I don't.
And all these windows are popping up. What the hell?
Yep. So dump them all in preview, and then just go down to share screen.
And
then,
I've got that preview. I'm just trying to.
Yep.
Don't
So
worry,
choose
Mark. I've been doing this for 8 weeks, and I still can't get this shit.
So where it says share your screen, the center option says application window. Click on that, and then choose preview.
All right. Did it pop up?
No, sir.
What the hell? Bear with me here. I
That's
click
okay.
share screen. Oh, application window.
We're getting close. I can
Almost
feel it.
there.
It's coming. It's coming.
Now is it working?
That would
Probably
be a
not.
no.
What the hell? All right. Rookie here.
This is the
So-
part in the audio version that gets really boring.
I bet. So there.
Mark's trying to look behind the computer to see
No.
if the pictures fell out the back or something.
Got a pop-up says Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen. Follow these steps.
Oh boy. Okay, so while Mark's following those
Okay.
steps,
Go ahead and do yours real quick or something.
I'll share a few really quick.
What the hell?
Only got a few. So the other week, oh boy,
Oh,
I'm
fancy.
sorry if I don't remember who it was that
Put
suggested.
metadata and everything out there. Wow.
Yeah. So I had a request that we do share metadata. And I know lots of times I'm just kind of rattling it off my top of my head, but I'm not really sharing all the data. I'm just sharing usually camera, lens, and that's usually about it. So tonight I took the liberty to
idea.
actually add metadata to this. So this was a couple of weeks ago, obviously, because I still have leaves in the trees here in Michigan. We pretty much don't have any at this point. but was headed to Grand Rapids to visit my girlfriend, and there was a storm front moving through, and I knew that it was probably going to be the last weather that I got of the year. So just pulled over on the side of the road and jumped out. And because Mark is doing a Sony, we have him on because of Sony, I figured I'd share all shots that were shot with Sony, just kind of keep with that theme for this show. But as you can see in the EXIF data, it's with the A7 III and the 28-75. Most of the time, I'm generally an aperture priority. It's kind of how I learned to shoot. It's just kind of where I live to shoot. It's just a nice fast setup for me to work with. So the aperture is at f6.3. I find that on the Sony camera that I tend to shoot what I would consider stop down a lot more than what I would on Olympus. So like the equivalent shot on Olympus camera at 40 millimeters, I'd probably be at like f2.8 or something, but on the Sony bodies, I tend to find myself hovering around the f6s to, f8 or something along those lines.
Yep.
So that's what this one was. It's an aperture priority at 6.3, 40 millimeters. So I was just kind of right in the middle of what that lens can do. Shutter speed a little slow, is a little darker, but my ISO was at the base ISO because I wanted as little noise as possible in the image. And I knew that I had a fast enough shutter speed that even though it was getting windy, the trees and the grass in the foreground would be fairly still in the image. And as you can see, the metering that I do 99% of the time is center weighted. The next shot was actually, I think a few days later that weekend. This is kind of over towards the Grand Haven, Michigan area. There's a little town called Spring Lake that you pass through on your way there. And there's this barn that to me I'm a barn guy. So it's kind of an iconic Michigan barn for me. It says on the front of it, the big strawberry. No idea what any of that means, but it's just a really cool barn that's slowly kind of fading out. But I loved the color of the vines that were growing all over it. And then these trees out and back, these maple trees that were kind of like this split between a yellow and a red. And my widest lens on the Sony is a Samyang 14 millimeter f2.8. It's the autofocus version of that lens. So I just wanted to be able to capture the entire barn in that. Again, aperture priority, same f-stop 6.3. It's just kind of like actually, to be honest with you, on my mode dial for one of my custom setups, I've got one for portrait work on the Sony, and then the other custom setting is for landscape. So it defaults to f6.3 right out of the gate. If I jump out of my vehicle to shoot and it's a landscape scene, I flip it on to number 1 on the mode dial, and that's the default aperture. And it gave me enough depth to where the trees in the background weren't like completely blurry. Even as wide as this is at f2.8, they would be quite a bit softer. So that's the reason for the f6.3. Focal length, it's fixed 14 millimeters, so it's not changing. And it was a bright day, so even at ISO 100, I'm still at 1,000th of a second for the shutter speed. And the metering was matrix on this one because I didn't want the clouds to get overexposed, and I knew if I pointed at the barn, those clouds would be like completely blown out. The next shot, so this was a shot, and I'm assuming maybe, Mark will have some images to share from this morning. He and I jetted over to the Lake Michigan shoreline pre-sunrise. Long drive for Mark that day. Not so bad for me because I was already in Grand Rapids. So, but we got there before sunrise, and it didn't look like it was going to be much of anything. And, if you're looking out over Lake Michigan, you're looking west, and it probably feels sort of counterintuitive to people to go to Lake Michigan for sunrise. But what I was hoping for was exactly what we got: the sun to be rising and illuminating the lighthouse and the fog house, and to light up the clouds out on the horizon. And we kind of lucked out on that. This is one of the few shots I have with the Tamron 70-180 f2.8. Again, aperture priority on this one. I'm at f8 so that I could keep as much of the lighthouses and pier in focus as possible when I shot this. And also the reason for the 70-180 is because the 28-75, my next longest lens, just didn't have the reach to give me that look. Granted, on the full frame sensor that Jerry's using, it's 42 megapixels. He could have cropped in and made this shot and still had as much detail as me. the A7 III isn't the high resolution version, so I needed to be able to zoom in a little bit. Bit slower shutter speed here, but still at ISO 100, so 1/320th of a second. And again, my standard center weighted metering for this shot. No filters on those shots, by the way, even though I do generally carry like a whole arsenal of filters with me. This is another shot with Mark that same day. Later on in the day, we went up to Ludington State Park in Michigan here and just wandered through the woods looking for color and things to shoot. And it was another chance for me to break out that Samyang, which is, 14 millimeter on the full frame cameras because of the aspect ratio is really, really wide, a lot wider than what you would see on the Olympus because of the 4:3 aspect ratio. So I just nestled this down into this birch tree, and the 4 segments that you can see that are, the left section of the frame, that's all one tree. They all just sprouted from one another. So I just wedged the camera down in there and fired off that shot. And you can see the exit data there. This is one of the few shots where I actually took it off center weighted and matrix metered just to try to get like the best average that I could out of the entire scene, because, shooting straight up into the sky generally means, your foreground elements are going to be pretty dark. And the last shot, probably one of my favorite shots of this year, in Michigan at least anyways, not counting stuff from out west. So as you can see above the image there, it tells you it's a 5-shot portrait orientation panorama. Now, these aren't single shots. These are bracketed shots. So they are 3 shots at plus or minus 3 EV. So basically you're looking at 15 images to create this panorama. And again, this is with the 28-75 shooting in manual here. I wanted as much control over the light as possible for this shot. And the shutter speed was quite a bit slower, 1/80th of a second. And you can see those waves are starting to really soften up and start to blur quite a bit. And again, my typical center weighted metering, a lot of fun to make this. And again, like I said, probably one of my favorite shots that I've made this year. Just the amount of color that you see spanning this image was pretty cool. So I will throw the empty chair of Jerry back into the scene here. And there he is. All right. So Mark, you got any success there?
I think we got it figured out now. So we'll give it a shot here.
I saw you had to dip out and probably restart Chrome, it looked like, maybe.
Yeah, it's awesome how that works.
For sure.
So how do you like that 70 to 180?
From what I've used of it so far, it's really nice.
That picture looked really good, man.
Thank you.
All right. Did it work?
Yeah.
Yes, it did. All right, let's throw you right up on the screen there.
Got some success. All right. So yeah, this was from the shoot Jamie and I did a couple weekends ago over to Grand Haven. This was kind of right before the sun came up, blue hour, and I was up closer to the water there than Jamie was shooting, and I was trying to do some long exposures, shooting with my filters. This one I had my 10 stop on. Shot at ISO 100, 36 millimeters, f11, and the exposure was 190 seconds.
Nice.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. I probably would have used a 6 stop here, but I unfortunately lost that on the last trip that we took, so had to move up to the 10 stop. But I love shooting long exposures, getting the silky water, and then the clouds are awesome that morning. So you got those streaking across, and you can kind of see the pinks, from the sun lighting up behind there. And I was really happy with this image. Got a few other ones that weren't long exposures that I haven't shared yet. What's that?
Don't change images yet.
Yeah.
So something I just want to point out, and so I see a lot of long exposures, and a popular thing for long exposures is, like a river or something like that, something with trees and stuff like that in the background. I think what you're showing here is, in my mind, probably one of the most ideal ways to do a long exposure image. Your rocks in your foreground and the pier and lighthouses, those will not move whatsoever in the wind at all.
Nope.
And just the mix of how, I'm corny, but rock solid and stable, the rocks are in the foreground and the pier, juxtaposed with the movement of the clouds and the silky water. It's incredible. So I just have to say it's probably one of my favorite pictures I think I've seen you make. It's amazing.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I love the shot. And like I said, this was really my first trip out with the Sony. And just, the difference is definitely in the details. I mean, how sharp and, clear everything is in the rocks and the pier all the way out to the lighthouse is awesome. It's just got a look, at least in my eye, that's just different than, what I'm used to shooting. It just definitely stands out how crisp, the details are. So we'll move on to this one. Was last week, Tuesday or Wednesday morning. I was sitting there on the couch watching TV with my girls, and my wife called and said, "Hey, looks like we're gonna have a good sunrise." And I looked out the back window and I could see it starting to glow. And I told the girls, I was like, "Hey, grab your coats. We're gonna go out for a minute." So we busted out the door and drove down the road a little ways to this farm, not too far from me. And it's got this little pond there. It's probably the best place near me to shoot sunrise. And the reason I'm showing this image was I didn't have time to mess with filters or, do anything with that. We just literally ran out before they were getting ready for school. And, I just took some quick shots, and the raw files on these, everything is black but the sky. You can't see the grass. You can't see that fence down the left-hand side with the brush over here. It's just all silhouetted with the color there. And, you put it into Lightroom and start pulling out your shadows and boosting the exposure. And it's unbelievable to me, how much you can pull out and still get a really nice image out of it. There's no noise down there in the grass or anything at all. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. So really quick, couple people are curious. The first shot on the pier, they're wondering if that is stacked or if that's just a single shot, and that's how
that is a single image straight. I mean, it's not straight out of camera. Obviously, I did some processing on it, but there's no stacking. It's just one single shot, 190-second exposure.
Yeah, and I agree. So, you're mentioning the image you're sharing now is a perfect example of the dynamic range and how much you can pull out of the shadows. I mean, you're pulling out information out of the shadows, and you can still see the foreground is green.
Yeah, that's what's wild to me. I mean, normally you start pulling the shadows up and that just turns to, fuzzy mud. And I could have pulled, the shadows up more, but I kind of liked, the contrast there and just having the highlights in the grass kind of where the sun's, starting to peek down. So that's as far as I pushed it, but you could definitely go further with it, and it's still a really solid image. And I shot this at ISO 800, 28 millimeters, f6.3, and then 1/40th of a second.
Nice.
So it's, still sharp. It was able to boost the ISO up to, be able to handhold that shot without messing with tripods and filters. And, it's just kind of a convenient, factor when you're shooting a full frame camera like that, where you can get away with a little bit more.
Right.
This next one is nothing terribly exciting. This is my nephew. This was like 3 or 4 days after I got the camera. We had early Thanksgiving over at my parents' house for my grandparents, who headed down to Florida for the rest of the year. And so I was just playing around, taking a bunch of just candid snapshots, basically just kind of pushing the camera to see what the files would look like. And this is ISO 5000, 75 millimeters, f3.2. Probably could have went with 2.8, but I think I probably just bumped the aperture. And then 1/125th of a second. And like we were talking about, then there's like literally no noise in this. His eyes are still, razor sharp, got that glossy look, and 5,000's not huge, but it's still a huge difference from what you're going to get on crop sensor. And then these last two are just some new things that I've been playing with. Trying to find some indoor fun as the weather's starting to turn here in Michigan, and I don't venture out into the cold too often to shoot. Kind of a wimp, or whatever you want to call it, but
fair weather photographer.
Yeah, pretty much. I'll go out if there's a good reason to, but I find it much harder to get out and shoot when it's cold, and I gotta bundle up and drive significantly far just to go shoot. But this is water with some oil in it, olive oil, and I was just basically doing some like macro work, and it's in a glass dish with an iPad about 2.5, 3 feet underneath it, and that's the flower on this iPad that's beneath, so it's all blurred out, and then just taking shots of the bubbles there. It's just something fun to do, something different.
It's really cool looking.
Yeah, I like it. It's just, like I said, just something
that
different to do.
That looks like something somebody would buy and hang up in their house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's for sale.
I think it's cool. I think it looks good.
But I got it as my phone, screen right now. You flip it, portrait orientation. It makes a cool screen background on your phone, or whatever. But just something fun to do, something different. And this last one here is a little bit more kind of playing around with some macro, and it's far from perfect. Still got some practicing to do kind of in this new realm. I'm not a macro guy at all. But what I've got here is a flower in a dish of water with a blade of grass being suspended in front of it, and 3 water drops to capture or reflect or refraction for the flower there. Like I said, just playing with some new stuff, something different. Got to practice my craft on that to be as good as what I hope to be. This was shot at ISO, what was it? 200, I believe. 75 millimeters, f2.8, 1/25th of a second, and it's, I think, 5 or 6 images stacked to try to get that blade of grass and the drops and the reflections all sharp and in focus. So just something new I'm working on. Kind of fun to play around with some different styles of photography. I pretty much 99% of the time shooting landscapes, and got to find something to do in the cold, crummy weather.
Nice.
Yes,
Yeah, that last shot. That's one of those things I've always wanted to try. I can't find blades of grass with the drops in the right spot though.
Yeah, it's amazing. You gotta practice getting them there. It took a long time to get that set up, and it takes a steady hand. So,
right. Yeah, for sure.
But it's fun. So
Adam wants somebody to turn off their phone or toy or whatever it is that was vibrating over there. So
that's not me.
So hey, Jerry, do you have any photos you want to share tonight? Or
I do not.
You do not. Okay, not a problem. I'm just cracking myself up over here. Sorry, everybody.
No.
So I had a question a little bit earlier, and it was from Adam So Adam wanted, I don't know if he wanted my specific or everybody's, but I'll jump in first because my name's on it. As far as the camera, the body durability, and ergonomics and things like that. So ergonomics wise, it's okay. It's not an OMD by any stretch of the mean. The grip depth isn't there like it is on the OMD. I don't have big hands. I've got average maybe. And I find that like the EM1X and the EM1 Mark III, like those all fit my hand a lot better. I think that the grip is a little deeper on the OMDs, so that is a plus in my mind just for the stability. Something Sony did that I think is just ridiculous is they put the lens release button in between the lens barrel and the grip. So your fingers are like crammed in there trying to push this button to release the lens, whereas on the OMDs, it's on the other side. So you hold the camera in your hand and the grip and then just push the button on the other side and just, twist it apart. So that's like a huge ergonomic fail in my mind, is just the placement of that. I can't speak to durability yet. I mean, I have had it in a little bit of rain, and I was paranoid and freaking out the entire time, but it still works. So I guess I'm good there so far. I just know that from what I've seen online from...
You seen how wet my camera got last week we shot? True.
So Jerry's way gutsier than I am when it comes to that. Other things, and this is just purely because of my time spent with Olympus. I'm not used to the fact that everything is backwards. You zoom the wrong way, you twist the lens the wrong way. Like everything just seems backwards of what it is on Olympus as far as that is concerned. I mean, that's just the system. Yeah. I mean,
it's just like anything. Yeah.
Yep. But the ergonomic side of things, it's not as well put together as Olympus. I mean, Olympus, I feel like I genuinely feel like it's like craftspeople, that are spending a lot of time designing these things, kind of the way you would see, a car manufacturer doing the clay models of cars. I'm sure that they go through the same process, at Olympus. I mean, maybe they do it at Sony and they just suck at it. I don't know, but
I don't know. I feel it different, man. I feel the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sony. I like the way Sony's feel in your hand. Like, I mean, they feel like they're carved out of a single piece of metal, and the edges are sharp. And
yeah, I will say for sure yes, you're right. So because of the shape, so Olympus has a more organic feel. There's a lot more flow and curve and softened edges, and then the Sony, the top plate is flat, and you have these like more defined edges around it and stuff like that. And the Sony does feel like more rigid, and I don't know how to explain it, but it does feel firmer. I mean, I guess rigid is just the best word for it. Not that the OMDs feel plasticky or anything like that, but I just think that the construction of the Sony probably doesn't have as much material removed from the magnesium frame, so it has a little more heft to it and a little more rigidity, whereas the Olympus has probably been designed purposely to remove any material that's not necessary to maintain the structural integrity. I like talking like I know what the hell I'm talking about, but I'm being serious at the same time, though. I think that they literally remove every bit of unneeded material from it to, again, maintain the lightweight of the bodies, because that's a big selling point for Olympus. Even the EM1X, as big as it is, it's still pretty light when you compare it to something like a D4, D3 or something like that.
Olympus cameras feel a little more plasticky to me than my Sonys do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both.
If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
It does.
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of it, for me, from my experience, I feel like it comes down to that top plate on the Sony. You can tell that's metal. So I've got an EM1 Mark II I'm shooting video with right now, and I know this top plate appears plasticky. Now, I honestly don't know the construction of it. I know that it's a magnesium frame under there. I don't think that Sony does the magnesium frame and then puts like a plastic shell on it. I think they just let you see the metal. and that's part of, you know, why the shape is how it is and why it feels more like a metal camera, you know, kind of like a Leica. A Leica, you can tell it's just machined out of this big block of brass or whatever it is that they use, because they don't cover that metal with any sort of, you know, plastic or other material. Right. But just purely from a handhold point of view, though, Adam, and my personal feeling is, for me, I like the way that the grip feels. And it just sucks that COVID's going on, because I would tell people, you know, go to a camera store and say, hey, let me pick up that, you know, A7III or A7R4 or whatever, you know, and then bring your Olympus in and then just hold them side by side to see how they feel. I don't have a problem with using the Sony at all. I mean, it works. It fits my hand. It's just not, it just doesn't have the same finesse to it for me that the OMD does.
The main difference to me is where the dials are located. So on the Olympus, your dial's up there on the shutter button, and it just kind of, your finger rests more comfortably on it, so you can spin them, you know, I guess easier.
Yeah.
The Sony's down below it, and so it almost has an awkward feel from where my finger wants to rest. So it's like I have to move your hand around to do it. And, you know, as time goes on and I get used to shooting it more, it'll probably be fine. But that was the first thing I noticed. It just feels like the dials are almost in an awkward position from what I'm used to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So on the OMDs, you know, fingers on the shutter, and you're not doing this. Your fingers on the shutter, you're just doing this. You're literally just kind of shifting it. You could actually almost leave your finger on the shutter and just slide it forward and just pull to the side and adjust it. So Adam says they just need that new Sony Micro Four Thirds sensor. You know what needs to happen? And I'm going to say it right here.
They need a full frame sensor.
I think if my hope was that, you know, when the news broke about JIP, was that if the camera division were being sold off to anyone, I was hoping that Sony would get all the Olympus tech, because if you mix those two camera systems together, then you got everyone else would be out of business. It would destroy Canon and Nikon and everybody else, except for the diehards. I mean, if you mix the technology and for me, ergonomics of the Olympus, you know, with Sony's sensor technology, and I love their eye autofocus tracking. It's like watching something from the Terminator or something, you know, just watching that focus point follow someone's face. You marry those two things together, man, you have the unstoppable camera. And I think it would be cool if something like that could happen and they kept Micro Four Thirds and just also had the full frame option as well, because they both have their place in my mind, for sure. Especially if you throw in the 1.8 primes.
Yeah, because they could do away with them A6000s and just go over to the Micro Four
make
Thirds.
that a Micro Four Thirds, you know. Oh my gosh, it'd be amazing. It would be amazing. But, you know, we all have our dreams, Adam. Right. We all have our dreams. All right, folks.
Give me a Sony with that image stabilization and that weather sealing, and I'll be happy.
Yeah. All right, so I guess it's probably about time to roll out here. Mark, dude, thanks for coming on. It's good to get somebody else's perspective on things, you know, because it's usually just Jerry and I just giving everybody our opinion. So
glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And I think probably, since how it's the three of us on the show tonight, probably, you know, I'll just ambush the show and you guys and just say, you know, look forward to 2021. If we can get past this COVID thing, look forward to new workshops next year. Yeah. Not that there was a problem with Michigan's Upper Peninsula, because it is one of the most amazing places in America, as far as I'm concerned. But look for some new things coming on the horizon. I know that we've got some destinations that Mark has had in his back pocket for years now that we'll hopefully be able to make that a reality, and just pay attention to that. And also in 2021, look for a new Mirrorless Minutes website, like a legit website that everybody can interact with. So I guess that's it tonight. If you guys have any parting words of wisdom. No. All right, good. Easy. All right, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Oh, hey, one other thing too, and I'm going to ambush. It's ambush night. I'm going to ambush Jerry on this. So I'm considering moving Mirrorless Minutes from Wednesday nights to Thursday. And if Jerry says that it's cool, then and it doesn't conflict with his schedule, then we won't see you 2 weeks from tonight. We'll see you 15 days from now, and it'll be on a Thursday moving forward.
Works for me.
Jerry? Good. All right, then that's it, man. We'll see you guys in 15 days. Same time, same bat channel.
Unless we get drunk before that and want to hang out, and then we'll be back sooner.
That's why it's one glass for Jamie. All right, you guys take care. We'll see you in 15.
See you guys.